Azulene is trending right now in K-beauty, and everybody's calling it the new hero ingredient coming out of K-beauty. However, I disagree because it's actually been around for a long time. The idea here is that it's super, super anti-inflammatory. To give you a little backstory, it actually was approved in Japan for the management of ulcers. So we have known about the anti-inflammatory benefits of this molecule for a long, long time because it's a very interesting molecular structure that we're dealing with. Basically, the molecule itself is lopsided. So there's a seven-membered ring and a five-membered ring attached to it, meaning that there's a positive end and a negative end. And so the way that the electrons are shared in this kind of configuration is what is giving it that blue color because of the way that light is being absorbed, and also why it's giving it the properties of being almost like an antioxidant where it's mopping up like free radicals when it's used like, in specific environments. Now, in the context of skin inflammation, is really interesting what azulene is actually doing because it's targeting both of the pathways that are contributing to inflammation in the skin. Okay, so I want to talk about these two pathways with you guys. So the inflammation starts when an enzyme known as phospholipase A2 cuts a fatty acid known as arachidonic acid. Now, when arachidonic acid is cut, it is gonna go down two pathways. So one of them is the COX pathway and the other one is the LOX pathway. The COX pathway creates prostaglandins, and then the LOX pathway creates leukotrienes. Now, both of these molecules are pro-inflammatory. So prostaglandins, the main one being PGE2, is really well known for causing redness, okay? And so it's really involved in that inflammation that we see that's, kind of manifesting as redness and just, like swelling and that kind of thing. Whereas the LOX pathway creates leukotrienes, and the leukotrienes are involved in like the itch pathway. So that's what, when you see inflammation that's causing itching, that's because of excessive leukotriene. Now, what azulene is doing is that it's actually inhibiting both of these pathways. So that's really important because the idea here is when you inhibit just one of them, what ends up happening physiologically is that there's a shunting going on. So all of that arachidonic acid is going to get like kind of shunted over, and it's going to go over to the other pathway and cause excessive conversion in the other pathway. So we don't want that to happen. That's why this like dual blocking of both of these lanes is really, really important. And it's also why azulene is being kind of marketed right now as a really true anti-inflammatory ingredient. It's also being marketed to help with like just basically cell membranes. And the reason for this is because azulene derivatives are actually blocking that lipid peroxidation that happens to membrane. So by blocking that lipoxygenase activity, this is what's going to decrease lipid peroxidation, which is the key thing that's damaging membranes. And so if you're able to control this, this is really, really beneficial for cell membranes, which is directly going to contribute to barrier integrity in the skin. It has also been shown to kind of downregulate downstream alarm signals. The big cytokines like TNF alpha, IL-6, these are like the two hallmark cytokines when we think about like inflammation. It's kind of like blunting those little alarms, which is going to inhibit that cycle from continuing of like, oh my God, there's inflammation, do more. And that, if that cycle keeps going, we just get inflammation that gets worse and worse with time. Now, what I find to be really interesting is that nobody's really talking about this, but majority of the data is actually around itch when it comes to this ingredient. It's not so much about redness, it's more about that itching components. I think really going to be beneficial for people who have things like eczema because that itch is really what's driving that eczema cycle for a lot of people. And so toning down that itch response can be hugely beneficial. Now, do I think this is like a hero ingredient that's going to like absolutely be a game changer? I don't know. I mean, the verdict is still out, but I think it's definitely nice to see ingredients that are coming out from that barrier health standpoint. Like, I feel if you can stabilize your barrier, you're basically stabilizing what we're able to extract from the actual membrane. So arachidonic acid, for example, is sitting in the membranes. And so if you pull less of it out, you're going to convert less of it through those COX and LOX pathways. So it's like kind of blunting the cycle, at that, higher level. So I think it's really, really cool, the mechanism of azulene. I just don't know if it's like absolutely like a game changer. Now, when it comes to formulation though, I would be very curious what percentage people are formulating with. The data does support that 0.05% of guaiacylene was actually helpful in newborns in terms of like calming down their diaper itch. So this is really interesting data, and I would just be curious to see how brands are really approaching the formulation chemistry. Know about like isolating the ingredient and like having serums just built around this one ingredient. I think it's just another example of how we can use ingredients that are very supportive in overall formula, but we might not need to make it like the hero ingredient of something.